On aircraft with a VHF localizer input to the FMS, localizer and a localizer back course approaches can be flown. The FMS uses the localizer to calculate the final approach course. Since the localizer is only one-dimensional, the FMS will retain GPS to determine the location of the final approach fix and the missed approach point. Using the GPS requires the approach be surveyed in accordance with WGS 84. When flying a back course approach with your FMS, the course arrow will reflect the landing runway. Inbound course, and on most aircraft, selection of back course on the flight director is not required. In addition, on most back course approaches, a barometric glide slope is available. This will make the approach similar to an ILS, but MDA minima must still be observed. VOR and VOR DME approaches can be flown as an SBAS overlay approach if the words or GPS are in the title of the approach. VOR and DME are required if the approach is non-overlay, if GPS is unavailable, or if the approach is not surveyed in accordance with WGS 84. If the country of origin does not authorize the use of SBAS or GPS, the FMS will deselect the GPS when the approach is armed. Transport Canada and the FAA request that the GPS be retained for FMS navigation for all VOR and VOR DME approaches in both Canada and the United States. In these two countries, to make a non-overlay approach illegal, the VOR must be monitored either internally within the FMS or externally by, at a minimum, the VOR RMI needle. The FMS does not know whether the approach is a GPS overlay or not. It only knows whether to use GPS or deselect it. Most VOR approaches will have a barometric constructed glide slope. NDB approaches can only be flown through the FMS with the use of SBAS or GPS. All WGS 84 surveyed NDB approaches will be available in the NAV database with SBAS or GPS retained. To make a non-overlay NDB approach illegal, the NDB must be tuned and identified, and the NDB RMI needle must be selected. Most NDB approaches will have a barometric constructed glide slope. Nav-to-nav ILS approaches can be flown with the use of the FMS and a nav-to-nav compatible EFIS, flight guidance system, and autopilot. With the approach active, and upon localizer intercept, the FMS will direct the ILS navigation from VHF straight to the EFIS for navigation during the approach segment. During the approach transition, or ATC vectoring, the FMS is the source for aircraft navigation. If the pilot goes missed approach, the FMS will resume aircraft navigation. Selection of flight director approach mode is required for the FMS to hand off navigation to the EFIS. This must be accomplished prior to the localizer intercept for both auto activation when flying an approach transition or when flying vectors with FMS heading to localizer intercept. On vectors to intercept the localizer, select flight director approach mode, then press FMS heading intercept. This will result in the nav-to-nav transfer taking place, the aircraft intercepting the localizer and turning to final. Where the approach is surveyed in accordance with WGS 84, GPS will be used to assist the FMS in navigating the aircraft during vectors or on the approach transition. At non-WGS 84 surveyed airports, the GPS will be deselected when the approach is armed. Approach transition navigation for the ILS must come from other nav sensors, or the FMS will be limited to dead reckoning. For aircraft without nav-to-nav capability, the ILS will be coded as advisory. The approach transition and missed approach can be flown with the FMS, but VHF ILS guidance must be selected by the pilot to fly the approach segment. The FMS will fly pilot-defined VFR approaches. VFR approaches will use all available nav sensors to fly the approach, including DME, VOR, and GPS. Where the pilot has created the definition for a barometric glide slope, the FMS will present it.